Hello and welcome to the Sandeep Unnithan Show, your weekly dose of defense, geopolitics, and much, much more. Today, I'm privileged to welcome to Chakra Studios Rear Admiral Raja Menon. He's former Assistant Chief of Naval Staff and one of India's foremost strategic thinkers. Admiral Menon, welcome to Chakra News.
I'm delighted to be here, Sandeep. And I've been watching your podcast. I wish you all the best.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. It's such an honor to speak with you. And I learn so much every time I speak with you. We've been in touch for many, many years. I want to start by asking you about this new port project that's come up, sir. The Great Nicobar Island Port Project in Galathea Bay. What's your take on this? I mean, how is it going to be a game changer for India? And what does this mean for, I want to quote your writings, a post-Mahanian world where navies are coercive instruments backing diplomacy rather than sea lane interdiction?
Yeah, to explain that, I have to go a little bit into what I might call our maritime, if I may use the word, grand strategy.
Right.
And the reason why I must do that is because many people say that we should write ours now that the Prime Minister has come out with a vision for 2047.
Right.
We have not yet done so. So, in doing so, we can't help but take note of what has been written by Beijing.
Right.
And Beijing has enunciated the only national grand strategy in the world today. We can't ignore it. And that grand strategy has, as ours does, have a big economic, financial, technology component.
Right.
But what it also has, which affects us deeply, is that it has a major military component.
Right.
And I must say at the very beginning that I am not suggesting in any way that we get into a conflict with China.
Right.
But if we have to live with China as our neighbor, a neighbor that is never going to go away, we have to take note of what it is aspiring to do.
Right.
And the military component of China's grand strategy has the strongest maritime component.
Right.
And what they are planning to do is get into a position where they don't want to take over the hegemony of the world, but they definitely want to do two things. One, challenge the United States hegemony.
Right.
And two, establish hegemony over Asia.
Right.
And that, I think, for us is a big no-no for a number of reasons. Because they have already chosen their South Asian partner. And in that grand sweep of Chinese grand strategy, what they are hoping to do is to make a giant sweep westwards through the Indian Ocean into Africa and Eurasia, across the Atlantic, to as far as, in this case, President Trump is right, as far as Panama.
Right.
And we are acknowledgedly an asymmetric power to China. Our GDP is 4.2 trillion, roughly. China is at 19 trillion. But what can we leverage to win this asymmetric competition? Unfortunately, I think that the dispute over territory is hindered by what I might call our poor Himalayan geography.
Right.
But on the other hand, China is hamstrung by her poor maritime geography. And that is the only long-term factor that we can leverage. So, in that China's grand sweep westward, if I may show one of the slides,
Yes, yes.
you can see that China today, this is not in the future, today it actually controls 129 ports in the world in 65 countries.
Right.
This is a prelude to, if you can show the second slide,
Yes.
Taking control of the littorals of various parts of the countries of the world. Admittedly, China also has a continental thrust westward, but it is hamstrung by a number of geopolitical reasons why it cannot move as far westward as the maritime component.
Right.
So, if we are to leverage the only strength we have, which is our maritime geography, we have to do two things. One, we have to establish oceanic dominance over the Indian Ocean.
Right.
To do that, tactically, we have to establish information dominance over the Malacca Straits.
Right.
It's not just me, but Hu Jintao, who first came up with the statement that China has a Malacca Dilemma.
Yeah, 20 years back.
They acknowledge it.
Yeah.
It's time we acknowledge this.
Right.
And if we have to establish superiority over the Malacca Straits, we need some place from which we can establish information dominance, a kind of Indian Pearl Harbor.
Right.
And that is where this base that you mentioned comes in.
The Great Nicobar Island
Great Nicobar
project.
Island.
But can it not be argued, sir, that the existing Port Blair, you have a lot of airfields there, you have a lot of naval installations, Air Force as well. Could the existing installations not do this task? Are they not up to this?
Great Nicobar is at 90 miles from the Malacca Straits.
Right.
That is given by God. Why should we ignore it? Andamans we have 300-400 miles away. But we have the mainland 800-900 miles away. We need to be there 24 into 7.
Right.
Over the Malacca Straits. Not only establishing our information dominance, but denying the enemy information dominance. As you are probably aware, I think most people are aware, 77% of China's maritime trade goes westward. And what are we talking about? 172,000 merchant vessels, the biggest merchant navy in the world. 77% of that goes through the Malacca Straits. This is the giant force that is going to sweep westwards, establish this. There is a fantastic new book called Breakneck.
Right.
I think Indian strategists need to read that. What it suggests is that China is going to make a serious challenge for the hegemony of the world through engineering, in which China excels, whereas the United States depends on Silicon Valley
Right.
for generating its wealth.
Right.
So this is the grand strategy of China, which we need to take note of before writing ours.
Right. So, I mean, that's a fascinating sweep that you've given us, Admiral Menon. And, in fact, when you said all this, I was actually thinking of all those little milestones that China seems to have been crossing in the last couple of weeks. We've seen their new carrier Fujian take to sea with an EMALS.
Yes.
And the most interesting thing was that they nearly have 200 carrier-capable fighter aircraft.
Yes.
It's one of the largest forces of its kind in the world. How can we are obviously fallen behind in that carrier race. We once were ahead, but now we're playing catch up. What do you advocate as a strategy for the Indian Navy, at least in the short term, to handle this power imbalance? And also, do you foresee an Indian Ocean deployment of the PLA Navy?
Sandeep, that's a very good question. And it allows me to go into maritime tactics, which I would love to go into. the big change that has occurred in the last 30 years in maritime tactics and technology is the advent of the land attack cruise missile.
Right.
What this missile does is give naval ships the ability not merely to attack the enemy navy, but to attack his homeland.
Right.
And today, of all the technological advancements that have occurred, including AI, man's conquest of near space, and all that,
Right.
the biggest phenomenon is in warfare is the achievement of transparency,
Right.
which means that a country is laid bare
Yeah.
to satellite surveillance to an accuracy of 20 centimeters. A country today has no secrets,
Right.
which means that the entire assets of a nation can be devolved into targetable coordinates.
Right.
A medium-sized country generates something like 5,000 targets.
That would be Pakistan.
Yes,
Right.
perhaps. But the United States Navy today fields 9,000 vertical launch silos on board its ships.
Right.
And the PLA Navy has gone down the same route and today fields something like 4,400 vertical launch silos. We have made a beginning.
Right.
And I must congratulate the designers of India's Type 18 destroyer,
Yeah.
which is going to come up in a few years, building in Mazagon. It's going to have 144 vertical launch silos. So today, navies are capable of not just attacking navies, but destroying, but paralyzing nations.
Right.
And that is going to be the future of naval warfare.
In a way that possibly Mahan also wouldn't have imagined.
Yeah, but what Mahan said was, note the English words. He said, sea power is going to influence the course of history.
Right.
That's precisely what the United States has done in the last 25 years by firing 2,300 land attack cruise missiles and influencing the course of history. So Mahan is still valid in that
Right.
sense, but the weapon used to establish Mahanian supremacy has changed.
Right.
To land attack cruise missile. And to take that question where I thought you were going, aircraft carrier.
Yes.
There are a number of amateur observers today who cast doubts on the vulnerability of aircraft carriers.
Right.
But what I want to say is that an aircraft carrier that is going to be built will have escorting it something like 5 destroyers,
Right.
who between them will be fielding something like 500 land attack cruise missiles, which will take out the enemy's drone launch facilities, ballistic missile launch facilities at ranges of 1,000 miles
Right.
before the carrier even closes the littoral.
Right.
And once the carrier closes the littoral, don't forget that a large carrier has on board something like 1,800 tons of explosive ordnance, which acts as a conventional deterrent.
Right. So carriers are very relevant. That's what you're saying.
Absolutely.
In our
Yes,
context.
because again, one has to relate it to geography.
Right.
In the Ukrainian war, not relevant.
Right.
But we are not Ukraine. We are not Russia. We are an oceanic power. The peninsula of India juts out into the Indian Ocean
Right.
and dominates the Indian Ocean, which, for the knowledge of observers watching this, 6,400 miles by 4,800 miles. And you cannot dominate the ocean without large aircraft carriers.
Right. So aircraft carriers are relevant in India's context What are the numbers that we're looking at, and what would be the displacement of each of these carriers?
I think I'm not a carrier person myself, but I can't see a great relevance for carriers of less than 70 to 80,000 tons. And choose that number not out of the air, but that is the size required for three things. One, to field three squadrons of fighters, so that when the carrier approaches the littoral of another nation,
Right.
it can contest the air force of that nation. One. Secondly, it will provide a catapult length adequate to embark air early warning aircraft,
Right.
which is the mistake that the Chinese did when they built the Liaoning, their first carrier. 80,000 tons, it's got a ski jump,
Which can't take
no catapult, which can't take air early warning. So when the Liaoning went to sea, it found itself to be operationally blind.
Right.
And the third, of course, are the other aircraft that the carrier will field, like refueling tankers and so on.
Right.
So one needs large carriers.
Right.
And we've got a shipyard that can build large carriers. And if I'm not mistaken, it's probably empty right now.
Yeah, there's no carriers being built,
Yes.
at least in the next couple of years. But what about submarines, Admiral Menon? And I want to ask you this because you're a veteran submariner yourself.
Yes.
You've made the case for submarines firing missiles.
Yes.
How does nuclear-powered attack submarines, how do they complement aircraft carriers?
There's no large aircraft carrier, without an accompanying SSN.
Right. A nuclear-powered attack
Nuclear-powered SSN. Apart from this, the future is going to be missile-firing SSNs. Why is that? Because SSNs can operate in waters that are contested. And our northern neighbor has established serious area denial capabilities over its own coast.
Right.
From where... Now, Sandeep, I want to say about this. If we want to live in peace with China, our armed forces have got to be able to create a capability that influences the choices seen to be available in Beijing's national security apparatus. What is that capability? As I said, we have a poor Himalayan geography. Chinese Air Force technology is world class. But if we can, one, establish dominance over the Indian Ocean,
right,
and secondly, establish a large SSN presence, it will give cause to the Chinese strategic thinkers to take note.
The Malacca Dilemma that you mentioned.
Not only the Malacca Dilemma,
Right.
but SSNs can operate in the South China Sea,
Right.
which are contested waters,
Right.
unlike the surface navy.
Right.
So the future is going to lie with missile-firing submarines.
So, coming back to the Great Nicobar Island project, sir, do you see that as being central to this, maritime battle space that you've outlined in the Indian Ocean region?
It will certainly be a big piece in the jigsaw puzzle.
Right.
As I say, it will be our Pearl Harbor.
Right.
For instance, a mini submarine base built in the Great Nicobar will enable our submarine crew to have rest and have a psychological rest before embarking on further oceanic patrols.
Right.
So this is the way that, and I want to say something else, which is that of all the three services, the Navy needs to get its idea of the future world correct, because it takes 30 years to build a Navy.
Yes.
And a building program of building a Navy cannot alter course midway. So it has to get its idea of what the world is going to be 30 years in advance. because it takes 6 to 8 years to build a warship. It takes 8 to 9 years to build an aircraft carrier. So we have to get this right.
Are we getting it right now?
I hope so. I hope so. I'm not in the know about, but certainly the Navy is aware of this chain of thought that I described.
Right.
They're aware of it, certainly, to define the future and to cater for a building program for that future. They're aware of that. That was put in place, if I'm not mistaken, by Admiral Arun Prakash about 20 years ago.
Right. There was another admiral before him, Admiral Bhagwat, who
Yes.
spoke of the Far Eastern Command
Yes.
at some point. And that was shelved for various reasons because the neighbors got anxious about the terminology used. Do you think it's time for us to revive that? And how does it fit into our, our thought process when you're looking at an India that's likely to be the third largest economy a few years from now?
Sandeep, I think that's been overtaken by the desire of the country to create theatres.
Right.
And I actually have written a paper on the theatre command. And I have suggested an ambitious theatre command. But that's up to the authorities to decide now. But you're right in one sense that if we are designing a theatre command for the world of 2050, 2060, we probably need to look at more than 3 theatre commands.
Right.
Maybe a Far Eastern theatre command.
And what would be the outline of a Far Eastern?
That I can't show you on a verbal interview. But
Right.
this would be fairly complicated. But I agree that this would be at the least contentious.
Right.
Because it has implications, diplomatic, foreign service, technological, economic, financial, energy implications. And that's better handled by a multidisciplinary body.
Right. So, when you're making these projections, Admiral Menon, I'm just thinking of the resources. The Navy commands, 14% of the national defense budget? Can all of this be achieved with that 14 or 15%?
I'll give you 2 answers to that. One is there are various numbers out there about what the country will be like in 2050.
Right.
It varies from the lowest estimate, which comes from McKinsey, which is 19 trillion, to figures which go up till 30, 35, 40, and so on.
Right.
If for safety's sake, we take the lowest figure, 19 trillion, we are looking at a naval budget of not less than 40 billion in 2050.
Right.
So, I don't see so much a shortage of resources, but I hope it will be not accompanied by a shortage of imagination.
When you say shortage of imagination, what exactly do you mean? That we aren't thinking big?
Well, you made the point. The Navy has been managing
right.
on a small budget. And that should not be, because the biggest military component of China's military grand strategy is the maritime component.
Right.
And we need to do the same. So we need to up the figures, up the naval allocation. But that said, there is a lot of coming and going as far as using the budget, meeting the budget within the financial year,
right,
and so on. This needs to be looked at a little more closely.
Right. In fact, Admiral Menon, when you were talking about imagination and how we need to expand our maritime battle space, I was thinking about the Cholas, the Imperial Cholas. One of my friends, Amish, has just got a book out on the Cholas where he talks about how they ruled for 900 years. And they were an expeditionary force. They had a maritime doctrine. Unfortunately, we don't know what it is. We're not great documenters of history. But if you were to think like the Imperial Cholas, what were the lessons that you would take from them?
Well, I am reminded of the fact that in Kanchipuram, there is a statue of Mahendra Varman Pallava, who influenced the building of the largest religious site in the world, Angkor Wat.
Right.
There is a statue of him looking out over the Southeast Indian Ocean. And when you look at it, it makes the hairs at the back of your neck stand up. You're right. The Chola vision is something we can do with.
Right. And this is exactly how they would approach this fusion of, maritime commerce and, integrate it with maritime military, like the Chinese
Well,
seem to
that
be doing.
I must say something is being done, both in Project Sagar
Right.
and in Project Sagarmala.
Right.
So the government has seen that the maritime component is not just a military component, but a holistic maritime component that includes the development of ports, logistics, connectivity, and shipbuilding, and so on. That I think the government is aware of.
Right. Is this too late in the day for this, or do you believe it's better late
better
than
late
never?
than never. Better late than never.
Of course, but the other point, Admiral Menon, is that the Quad was our go-to security architecture. Well, it didn't have a overt security architecture. A lot of us thought it had a implied security architecture, the four democracies coming together. The fact that President Trump has gone silent on the Quad, do you believe that the Quad is now in cold storage? Is it dead? What form will it take?
I'm not fully in the picture as far as the diplomats who are covering. I don't think there is. I'm not sure whether the Navy attend these Quad meetings, but I'm not sure what the status is today. But as I said, I don't visualize getting into a conflict with China.
Right.
But we have to not only survive, but do well in the Beijing's vision of an Asia dominated by China.
Right.
We have to cater to that eventuality.
And that is where your paper comes in. It's a superb paper, this 2022 paper I was reading, which talks about reorienting Indian military grand strategy from defensive territoriality to offensive oceanic in the Indo-Pacific, where you actually put in all of this.
Yeah.
And you're talking about planting the seed of doubt in the planners in Beijing when they're looking at...
Absolutely. Absolutely. I want to disturb the sleep of Xi Jinping.
Right. Is it disturbed right now?
I don't think so.
Why not?
I would like to refer to, somebody should be doing a long-term study on the net result of the competition between China and the United States.
Right.
This used to be done quite regularly by an organization called the Office of Net Assessment,
Right.
which used to be run by the great American strategist, Andrew Marshall. I understand that the present administration has closed down that office. But that doesn't stop us from doing that study. What is going to be the net result of the American-Chinese competition? Well, as I said, this new book that has come out believes that the future growth of the world's business
Right.
will not be controlled so much by Silicon Valley, which is into services, artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and so on, but by engineering,
Right.
where the masters are the Chinese. And that study, that forecast, is based on the fact that the one continent today which needs development, which is going to develop, is Africa. And what Africa needs is engineering and not artificial intelligence.
Right.
They may be right. I don't know. But I don't have... this study has to be done by a multidisciplinary group,
Right.
which includes economists, financial, military, and so on.
In India.
In India.
Right. So coming back to Xi Jinping, sir, the fact is that we don't seem to have deterred him along the land borders. How would these maritime battle spaces that you've put in your paper, how will that kind of keep him awake at nights?
Well, to put it not so delicately, it must be conveyed to the Chinese leadership that operating through the Indian Ocean with a hostile India could be dangerous. That's it in a nutshell.
Right. So you're saying that any action along the Himalayas will have maritime consequences.
Indeed, yes. I'm certain that our valiant army can hold the border.
Right.
But that alone will not frighten Beijing. We need something more.
Right. And this is despite the thaw in Indo-China relations. Of late, we've seen the Prime Minister Modi.
Well, that didn't stop the use of both Chinese technology and Chinese surveillance in Operation Sindoor.
Right.
So there we have what will result in case of hostilities. The Chinese grand strategy of controlling the littorals of various countries in the world, it starts with the Pakistani coast.
Right.
So there we are confronted with a situation which is unfortunate.
Right. The two front situation, which is now a lot of people saying it is just one front.
I am not a proponent of a two-front conflict. I don't think, just as I say that we don't want to get into a conflict with Beijing, perhaps China doesn't want to get into a direct conflict with us when they have a proxy.
Right. And we saw that in Operation
Sindoor.
What are the biggest lessons to your mind, sir, with Operation Sindoor, where we saw the targeting of Pakistan in 30 minutes, multiple BrahMos missiles were fired, the air bases were paralyzed, and there are some very erudite thinkers who believe that we paralyzed their nuclear vectors as well, hitting the air bases, special weapons facilities.
That was a good example.
Right.
Once upon a time, about 100 years ago, and all the way backwards,
right.
The purpose of war, I mean, why do we go to war?
Right.
The purpose of war was to change, to achieve a number of things,
right.
which can be put together in one basket called changing enemy state behavior.
Right.
As I said, 100 years ago, this was achieved by going and occupying the enemy's capital.
Right.
And dictating peace terms, like we did in Dhaka,
right.
1971. Peace terms, Shimla, 1972. But with the advent of nuclear weapons, that is out. So how does a state achieve its geopolitical aims? Through war. War now consists of dropping ordnance on the enemy in such large quantities that he agrees to change his mind.
Right.
The limits of that strategy are not yet visible. For instance, you take the strategy against Hamas. They have absorbed the loss of 65,000 people and the destruction of their homeland, but not surrendered. But on the other hand, the attack on Fordo, the Iranian enrichment facility, which included 20 land attack cruise missiles from American SSN, has changed state behavior.
Right.
Pezeshkian has apparently yesterday declared that Iran will not build a nuclear weapon. That is changing state behavior.
Right.
So we have to decide or we have the armed forces have got to decide how much ordnance does it take to change Islamabad's state behavior.
How much do you think, sir? Because you've done nuclear warfighting studies, strategies.
Eventually, I think takes quite a bit.
In terms of tonnage,
Tonnage. Tons. Tons and tons.
will it not cross the so-called red lines that General Khalid Kidwai put out for their going nuclear when you destroy their military infrastructure, for
Yeah.
instance?
Well, it is their job to deter us.
Yes.
It is our job to achieve our state's geopolitical goals. So there will always be that conflict.
Right.
But I took part in a number of war games with the Pakistani military some time ago. And all I can say is their threshold is fairly robust.
It's very high.
It's fairly robust.
Right.
But it is in their interest to signal that it is very low,
Right.
which is natural as they are achieving their state goal.
Right. But you see Operation Sindoor as a beginning to some kind of dynamic Indian response strategy to
Yeah, that will be the way to go. That will be the way to go.
dropping a lot of ordnance
Ordnance.
onto them.
Yes.
And you came up with a number, I remember, about 2,000 targets, you said, would be sufficient to paralyze the Pakistani military.
Well, something like that. I think 2,000 to 5,000 targets.
Right.
Well, I'm taking that number from Operation Desert Storm.
Right.
When the coalition forces actually pinpointed 12,000 attacks to paralyze Saddam Hussein, completely paralyze the country. They attacked 12,000 actual attacks, which may have been generated by something like 4,000, 5,000 targets.
Right. So this is the kind of force planning that we should be doing for
Absolutely.
this. And not pursuing, say, a cold start kind of option, you think? Or is that completely off the table now?
Well, I haven't gone into that. But, well, Pakistan, in case of Pakistan, it has been demonstrated that the threshold will probably be lower in case of physical invasion.
Right. Which is what something like cold start would
Yes.
entail. Admiral Menon, the government has just tested the Agni Prime rail mobile missile. The Agni Prime is one of our most capable new missiles. It was tested a few years back. Make sense of this test firing for us. A 2,000 kilometer range IRBM, a canisterized rail launched version. Where does this fit into India's?
Well, I
nuclear
think
strategy?
people are looking at their nuclear arsenals again. I haven't made a recent study of this, but certainly the Chinese arsenal is growing. And maybe somebody has conducted an operational analysis study, which I haven't done. So I'm not sure about the Agni Prime.
Right. But a rail mobile IRBM 2,000 kilometer range missile canisterized, what would be the benefits of having a system like this?
Oh, deterrence, definitely. Deterrence. I mean, nuclear war cannot be won.
Right.
So let's be clear that we don't want to go there. We don't want to go there. And once deterrence is established, military strategy must then look at then what.
Right.
And that's what we've been discussing all this time.
Admiral Menon, thank you so much for your time and for your thoughts. That was a fascinating conversation we just had. What a sweep of maritime security, geoeconomics, and nuclear warfighting as well. Thank you very much for your time and for your thoughts.
Not at all. Not at all. I wish your podcast gains more and more traction in the whole country.
Thank you, sir.